Hello everybody, I am Creeper and today I'm back with a brand new Doctor Who review. So here's an interesting one. We haven't done a classic Doctor Who review in a long time and people have been asking for them. I've seen a few comments going, will you review some classic Who? And I thought since we've still got months to go until Revolution of the Daleks, I thought it would be a good time to start doing some classic Doctor Who reviews. I've started collecting the collection box sets, it's sort of in the name, and I thought I'd go through a few stories, but I've got a big announcement about classic Who content on the channel at the end of this video, so please do stay tuned for that after the whole review. I would also like to point out that this actual story to review was recommended by a Patreon supporter. When you get a $10 tier on my Patreon, you actually can recommend videos for me to do. Totally whatever it is, mostly Doctor Who related, but you suggest a bit of content and I'll do it. He suggested a classic review, he suggested Earthshock, and now I'm doing it. So if you want to suggest your own stuff, you know where to go, the description. But today we're talking about a fan favourite, Earthshock, a Cyberman story, one of the biggest companion departures of all time. It's pretty famous, it's pretty big, and I just watched it recently for the first time. The way we're going to do these classic reviews from here on in, we're going to be talking about the story just a little bit, then we're going to be talking about the first half and the last half, or the first act, last act type thing. So if it's a 4-part story like this, it'll be the first act is episodes 1 and 2, last act is episodes 3 and 4. If it's a 6-part one, it'll be first act will be episodes 1, 2 and 3, last act will be episodes 4, 5 and 6. The way we're doing it is just breaking it down into 2 so we can use the same format for every classic review we do, no matter how many episodes there may be. We might change that for ones like, for example, Master Plan, if I end up ever watching it, with this big meaty 12-parter. So we'll have to see about that. But today, story, first act, last act, talking about the characters, then we'll talk about best bits, and then a rating out of 10 and my overall thoughts. So yeah, without any further ado, let's talk about Earthshock. So first talking about the story is basically one regarding the Cybermen terrorising a conference on Earth. The conference is being held with the intention of combating and sort of wiping out the Cybermen for good. So the Cybermen decide to have some sort of plan, it gets a little bit disrupted by the Doctor, and they eventually try to get a ship with an antimatter core to crash land onto Earth and either blow it up or just kill as many people as possible. Bit of a collision course, bit of a sort of countdowny kind of drama-y type story, but it's a classic villain, instantly simple concept, and good to follow. The first act, episodes 1 and 2, some great setup, honestly, but to me, that's all it kind of feels like. It just kind of feels like setup. The planet in the cave exploring was pretty interesting. It was genuinely quite enjoyable. Obviously, you can see that's the BBC budget coming in. Let's film in a quarry, let's film in like a cave. Building new good guy characters who would think the Doctor and co are enemies, bad guys. It's a trope that's used throughout Doctor Who, but used weirdly enough twice in the story. Right at the beginning with the soldiers in the cave, and then in the second part with the characters on the ship, seeing the Doctor and Adjutant going, "You're murderers, we're going to execute you," big cliffhanger type thing. So yeah, a bit of an odd one, but like it's a trope that's there. I'm not going to complain about it because this is classic Who, and this is kind of where the tropes sort of originated from, so we're not going to go on and on about it. The Cybermen reveal at the end of episode 1 was actually quite well done, obviously because Earthshock is a famous Cyberman story. There was no genuine shock or like, oh, what's going on here when I was watching it, obviously because I knew it was going to be Cybermen anyway, but they're still enjoyable, and I can still appreciate those moments, sitting back and pretending that I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know Adjutant was going to die, I didn't know the Cybermen were going to be in it. I was going to watch it as its own adventure and just sort of try and surprise myself even though I know what's coming. Because that's what you have to kind of do when you're reviewing these sort of classic stories. You have to get into the mind of the audience back then, because that's what I do for my New Who reviews. I'm in the mind of a New Who audience watching it for the first time. So I have to get my mind back to being an audience member back in the sort of 80s when this episode was first airing, nobody knew anything about it, etc, etc, etc. The spaceship sequences were actually pretty cool, and that sort of stretches over to the last act as well. It's great set design, looks really good sort of to look at, strikingly nice. The Cybermen designs are pretty good, all that sort of thing. And each sort of character in the sort of first half definitely served a purpose. It's the weaker half of the story, but it's certainly not bad. Now the last act, episodes 3 and 4. The stakes start to sort of rise up a little bit. The ship's swarming with freshly awoken Cybermen storming through the ship, beautifully shot, very, very nice looking and feeling. The Cybermen had a presence again. It's their big return after quite a few years of not being on the show, so it really felt like that as well. The Cybermen felt quite ruthless, mostly unstoppable, which was actually quite exciting to watch, seeing the humans kind of get cornered into one room Again, quite enjoyable to watch. The final act with Adric being determined to sort of save the day, playing with the sort of ship's controls, trying to work out these puzzles, trying to get control back and save the day, ending up being his downfall, was beautifully done. It's very typical, classic sort of tragedy in a story, and I really, really like the way it was not only performed by Matthew Waterhouse, but also the way the scene was put together. The way it kind of makes you believe that Adric is still going to save the day until the sort of last 5 minutes, and you're like, oh god, he's not going to get out of this. Even though I knew Adric was dying, and I knew he was going to die from the beginning, I was still watching it like, oh my god, no, get out of there, get out of there. Oh, it's exciting, and it plays with a lot of twists and turns, and I think it could have just been very surface level, and it absolutely wasn't. It brought its A game. The writing was on point, the acting was on point. It felt like a proper Doctor Who story, a proper classic Doctor Who story. I know that's what it is, but watching it, I sort of, yeah, I agree with everyone else's sentiment on it. We'll talk about that scene specifically in more detail in just a bit. But first, we're going to talk about characters, starting with the Fifth Doctor. Now, this wasn't my first Fifth Doctor story. It's certainly a standout for his Doctor. It's fair to say I did enjoy his performance in this story, especially towards the latter part of it. To be honest with you, I didn't sort of instantly connect with him as much as I have with Tom Baker or Patrick Troughton. Some of those after one story, never mind like 4 or 5. Whereas Peter Davison, again, it's not the first I've watched of him, and I'm still not properly connecting with his Doctor. I thought I know it's intentional to have that bickering between him and Adric at the beginning, but it just didn't, something about it just felt off. I can't really explain it. It's not me being a sort of New Who fan, not understanding the character, or maybe it is me not understanding the character, but I just didn't connect as well as I would have liked to. Maybe watching more Fifth Doctor stories will sort of change my opinion on that. Hopefully it will, but at the moment, the way I stand on it is like, yes, he was great in this story, Peter Davison, no complaints, I just don't connect with him too well at the moment. Okay, let's talk about Adric. So again, this isn't my first story with this companion, and in the other stories I did find him quite annoying and taxing. Not appallingly bad, but I can kind of understand why a lot of fans don't connect with him as a character too well. It's totally understandable because his attitude and the way he does it, it's very different to that of other companions, classic and new, and it can be very jarring, and you can see why it's not a personal preference for a lot of people watching Doctor Who. That being said, in this story, you know, with it not being my first Adric story, I still really enjoyed his character. You know, there was a bit annoying at the beginning, but the second half, especially where he's sort of taking control, trying to save the day, I really felt that this actually felt like an arc. Even though I haven't seen like half of Adric's stories, it's like I felt the arc sort of coming to a close. Like he's actually turned around from this kid, he's taking control, he's actually going to try and save the day. He does fail in doing that, but it's not a failing, haha, you failed. It's like, it's a tragedy because he was so close and he probably was right in what he was doing, and it's just one little slip up and that's it, and you knew that was locked in, and it was just beautiful. I absolutely adored the tragedy of this sort of swan song for this character. He's a quite intelligent character, but he was thwarted by a single Cyberman, and I think that's just brilliant. It's sudden and it's brutal and it's basically perfect. Tegan and Nyssa, put these two companions together because I didn't really know what to say about these companions. They're great companions as of what I've seen so far. Again, not my first story with either of these companions. They didn't do too much to this story for me. They did little bits here and there. They weren't as useless as, for example, like Ryan in Series 12, so I kind of get behind it. But again, there's not too much I want to say about them. You know, they did enough. They were there. They served the plot. They did a great job, especially towards the end, reacting to Adric's death. It's always very heartbreaking to see someone properly react, because the Doctor, always very good at keeping composed, even when that happens. He genuinely looked distraught, did the Doctor, but the companions being like, oh my god, no, Adric! That was so well done, because it was such a human reaction, and it was great to see the comparison between the human companion reaction and that of the Doctor, who has seen death, he's seen tragedy, and it hurts, but he doesn't show it in the same way as a human, and I quite like to see that balance between the two, as having the companions there was definitely a great feat. They did enough for the story, but there's not too much else I really want to say about them. The Cybermen are phenomenal villains. They're probably my favourite Doctor Who villains of all time. Even though a lot of their stories are sort of hit or miss for me, I still really enjoy them and I love the concept behind them. This story definitely stands out as one of the best Cyberman stories, for sure. That should be obvious. For people who have seen it, you kind of guess it. Yeah, it's definitely one of the better ones. Doesn't lean too much into the body horror angle that I really enjoy with the Cybermen in terms of converting and all that sort of thing. But what it does lean into a little bit more is a sort of army side of it, feeling like an actual force to be feared in the galaxy. A little bit Dalek-like, but not exactly the same. It's quite strikingly different, and having that sort of formation thing where they're all sort of walking through the ship with guns and stuff, it felt more impactful and it felt new and a bit refreshing for me. You know, I quite like that in New Who anyway, when they're sort of marching around. It's not, you know, perfect. I don't really like that. I obviously prefer the body horror stuff, and I do think Earthshock did it better than some of New Who's done it together with the sort of marching robot type thing. I don't really love that. But it's fair to say I really enjoyed what they tried to do with the Cybermen in this story. You know, it wasn't about the conversion, it wasn't about that side of things, it was about them with an evil plot, and that's that. And it worked. It's not the best Cyberman story I've ever seen, it's probably not even in my top 3, but it's still really enjoyable, and it's still just there, and I still really enjoy it. And also it kind of makes me warm to the new design as well. The design that was used first obviously in Earthshock and then later throughout some more. I think Attack of the Cybermen I think it was used in, and somewhat the Silver Nemesis, even though the design was somewhat changed. The face structure's the sort of same. So it's that I sort of really didn't like, and I've sort of warmed to it a little bit. Still not my favourite, but I've warmed to it because of how good this story was. Best bits, let's talk about best bits. First of all, Adric's death was perfect. It was so good, and not because I don't like the character, because again, I don't mind the character. I'm 50-50 on him. Sometimes I really don't like him and he's annoying. Sometimes I kind of get what they're trying to do, and they're trying to do that with the character and it works. Either way, it was tragic, and it was so well done. Because, and we'll get onto the whole Jurassic meteorite twist thing, but basically when we find out they've gone back in time warp thing, and they're back in time and they're in the Jurassic era, and then the people on the TARDIS realise, obviously like the companions and the Doctor, they realise that the ship is going to crash land, it's not going to wipe out humanity, but it was the ship that crashed and wiped out the dinosaurs instead of a meteorite. It was this ship. From that point we know Adric's going to die, because we know he's not going to get off the ship, because we know when he jumps out of that airlock and he's like, no, I know what to do, you're like, oh no, because you just kind of, you know it's coming, and that is so beautifully executed. It's such a clever way of doing it, and it's just a good bit of storytelling, and you can kind of smell it a mile off, because you watch it and you're like, wow, this is actually really good. Because let's be honest, Doctor Who does have a lot of duds here and there. This was an absolute standout, because you can sort of see the elevated level of sort of writing, performing. The passion that's gone into the story is just very prominent, and you can really see that, and I think that's definitely something to be commended, especially with the whole death sequence. The twist with the Jurassic meteorite thing I thought was really clever. There was a sort of name drop towards the beginning of the episode where they sort of talked about it. I thought it was just throwaway dialogue. I thought it was just sort of companion dialogue. This is one thing I didn't know about, and as the story developed and I saw the whole thing of them going with time warp 65 million years in the past, hovering over Earth, dinosaur age, they're going to oh, that's brilliant. So it's what Doctor Who does best, which I really like, is taking a real life thing that happened and basically going, actually, it was aliens. I mean, it wasn't. We know, like, oh, maybe it was, we don't know. But it's such an interesting concept to play with, and it's like one big historical event that I never realised was touched upon in Doctor Who. It's just a clever twist, because I thought it was like a sort of throwaway line or a throwaway dialogue sequence at the beginning of the story in episode 1. But to have it actually rectified and picked up again for the finale, that just topped it off for me. So I was already really enjoying it, I was already really loving what the story was doing, but then I went, oh, that is brilliant. I genuinely reacted. I was like, oh my god, that works. That works, and I like it. And finally, I want to talk about the credits as well. And that sounds sort of sarky. I know a lot of people are going, oh, what's your favourite part of Series 12? The credits. But for me, I think the credits for this was so different, you know? Because usually we're used to the Doctor Who theme playing, sort of the title sequence backdrop and the sort of text scrolling up the screen. Love the fact, because I didn't know this was coming, that the final shot was Adric's sort of star that was on his costume, sort of battered on the ground. Obviously it was used to kill a Cyberman. So it's sort of on the ground, battered, broken. Silence as the text scrolls up. I mean, perfect. I was watching it and I was like, wow, brilliant story, all that sort of thing. Can't wait to write down my notes on the Google Doc for the review. And I sat back and I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's something wrong with my sound. I realised it wasn't actually my TV that was bugging. I thought like, oh, something's gone wrong. But I sat back and gone, no, this is definitely intentional. And wow, I mean, this is genuinely gorgeous. This is beautiful the way they've done this, and it's the little things for me. And when Classic Who, and especially just Who in general, but you know, Classic Who, when it does these sort of little things like that, it just totally surprises me and shocks my system. Like, I knew Cybermen, I knew Adric was going to die, it was very well done, but then the Jurassic meteorite twist, I was like, oh my god, that's brilliant, that's so clever. And then the ending, the credits, I was like, oh my god, what a brave choice, brave and bold choice for Doctor Who in the 80s to do that. Mad respect. It's only a little thing, but it makes so much difference to the story. So yeah, really love the credits on this one. Out of 10, what do I give it? I am going to give it an 8 out of 10. It is a great story overall. I definitely think the first half suffers a little bit and probably isn't the most enjoyable. If I was rewatching it, I probably wouldn't be too in tune with the sort of opening half. It's definitely important, it's definitely valid. I'm not saying it's crap, it's still good, it's just not as phenomenal as the second half, so you always look back on the first half and go, yeah, but it wasn't as good. It was still good, but it wasn't anywhere near as good as the phenomenal last act of this story, which was genuinely mind-blowing and brilliant. So yeah, it's quite difficult to compare the two, But, you know, I say that the episode is great. Definitely a bit of a slow first half, but the second half is absolutely worth it. And especially that last episode is just raw Doctor Who perfection. Genuinely beautiful. Loved watching it. Big fan of this story. And that is my review. So before we wrap this video up and do the whole outro thing, I thought I would talk about classic Doctor Who on this YouTube channel from now on. What you can expect to see, what's going to be happening, all that sort of thing. So since I started doing classic reviews all the way last year before, when I was doing Remembrance, Genesis, Time Warrior, I did a few one-offs that people suggested, or just a few one-offs that I maybe just watched. People have requested for me to start doing classic reviews again, so that's what I'm doing. I started with a fan favourite, Earthshock, obviously because not only was it requested by a Patreon, but it's a big one. It's a one that people really wanted to see. It's a one that people were really interested in. And it's just one that's striking enough to get people back into the idea of classic Doctor Who reviews on this channel. But from now on in, we're not going to be doing individual random classic Doctor Who stories. We're going to be going a season at a time. Starting next week and following every single week onwards, like my Torchwood reactions, I'm going to be reviewing one Doctor Who classic story, all from the same season. So if you have the season box set, great, you can sort of watch along with me, or if you've already seen it before, just watch the reviews. If you haven't got the box sets, you can obviously jump on BritBox, all that sort of, there's so many options. They're online, BritBox, the box sets, the individual DVDs. You can find them anywhere. The classic Doctor Who is readily available, so there's definitely ways of watching it if you haven't already. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting with Season 12. Season 12 is obviously the first Blu-ray collection box set that was released. It's definitely one of the rarest ones. I don't expect all of you to have this box set. I'm very lucky to have this myself. But it's a fan favourite season that has a lot of good stories on it that we'll work through, we'll talk through. It's obviously Tom Baker's first season, so it's a big season for the show. So I thought, you know, using a lot of the classic examples and sort of big stories that are in this season, it would be quite an interesting one to talk about. So, starting next week, we're going to be doing Robot as a review. The week after will be The Ark in Space, then The Sontaran Experiment, Genesis of the Daleks, and Revenge of the Cybermen. 5 Doctor Who stories over 5 weeks, all following the same sort of story through Season 12. So if you haven't already seen any of those stories, get watching, because you want to see these reviews, you want to get the stories watched at least first. And to top it off, after doing all 5 reviews of the season, me and Jack, who obviously has been in Drunk Lords if you haven't already seen him, will be going on a live stream together and talking about the entire season of Classic Who. Not just the individual stories, we'll do all the individual story reviews, then we'll give our thoughts on the whole season live on a YouTube live stream, so that should be quite fun. So yes, if you haven't already, get some access to Season 12, some of the box sets if you haven't already seen them. Either, again, box set, BritBox, online, DVDs, whatever you want. It's all available. After we've done Season 12, we'll obviously continue with different seasons through Classic Who. We'll jump to different random ones. So yeah, you can all look forward to that. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment below for any more Doctor Who suggestions in the future. Subscribe with notifications on if you haven't already, because YouTube is a bit of a mess. Check out the Patreon page if you want to support the channel. Remember, for $1 a month, you can get early access content, your name in my descriptions, and exclusive access to the Patreon Discord server where you can join me in conversation, talk about Doctor Who, talk about whatever, and help me work on content together. It's kind of a collaborative space, which is quite nice and fun and enjoyable. You can share your content, all that sort of stuff. I've also got Twitter, Instagram, all that sort of stuff is in the description below. So yeah, I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you next week with Robot. See you later. Bye-bye.